Hello, welcome to another episode of Decentralounge, brought to you by Global Stake, your institutional SOC 2 Type 2 compliant, truly decentralized, self-owned and managed bare metal staking service provider. Welcome to today's episode where we discuss Fiamma, a unique Bitcoin bridge solution. Before launching Fiamma, Yovela Luo, who is our guest today, career spans significant roles across major financial and technology sectors. She served as an investment banking analyst at Citi in Hong Kong, focusing on the financial institutions group and cross-border M&A in fintech. Her experience extends to strategic roles at Tencent, where she worked on NFT and content technology, and Binance, focusing on infrastructure and DeFi investments. This led her up to today, where she is the co-founder and CEO of Fiamma, a pioneering firm dedicated to enhancing the programmability and utility of Bitcoin through innovative zero-knowledge infrastructure. With her deep understanding of financial modeling, strategic investments, and entrepreneurial adventures, she is pioneering the Bitcoin renaissance by making Bitcoin a more dynamic and programmable asset, enhancing its utility for real-world applications through innovative ZK technology and infrastructure. Join us as we delve into the transformative technology behind Fiamma, discuss their recent successful funding round, and explore Yovela's vision for the future of digital assets. Yovela, welcome to the show. Why don't we start off just telling us a little bit more about yourself, your background, and what really brought you into the blockchain world and the Web3 space?
Yeah, I think you just gave a really awesome intro about myself, and I haven't given others such a comprehensive introduction, even including my investors. So I think that's a really comprehensive one. So very good job. And yeah, so I can start talking a bit about how I got into Web3. So actually, the first time I heard about Bitcoin was when I was around like 6 or 7 years old, because my mom is like a hardcore gamer. She loved playing World of Warcraft. So I've been playing the game with her since I was also 6 and 7 years old. And then she got a lot of like friends, that are actually super young at the time, and they're all buying Bitcoins. So my mom asked me, what the heck is Bitcoin? Is it a scam? And then I look it up online and it says it's a scam. So I told her not to buy it. So that's that's how I lost my chance of becoming a billionaire. Yeah. So but actually that planted a seed, in my heart about, my future journey to Web3. And then fast forward, I did, I studied philosophy and also business at UNC Chapel Hill. And then I did like a couple, internship in both consulting, investment banking, etc. And then at the time, that was when I was like working at Tencent, particularly, it's like early 2021. And at that time, NFT was very popular, right? They're like NBA Top Shot, a lot of things. So my manager is like, "Oh, Yovela, you have to research on what the heck is NFT," because he feel that like, oh, at Tencent we got so many great IP like games, and then different those characters that could actually be well monetized, using by making them NFT. So I started the research, and then I got into the space deeper, and I found that actually it's more than just like, the coins, the something that you think like is in the thin air. There are a lot of technology behind it. So I at that time, like, so during early 2021, I knew about like Decentraland, Axie Infinity, those kind of game and metaverse things, and I found this super interesting. And then I was also like a big fan of meme coins, so I bought like Doge coins and these type of things, and then actually those are one of my best investments, and that's very hilarious. So I found that there are like so many interesting infrastructures and use cases that build out of the decentralized version of the internet. So I've been looking into opportunities to get into space. And then at that time, it's a time for me to work at investment banking, because the investment banking recruiting is started pretty early. So I got my internship position 1 year ago. So I did the investment banking summer internship first. And then right after the internship, I got an opportunity from Binance Lab. So it's like, they're expanding, they're looking into investing in more crypto native stuff. So I have the chance to, got to know a lot about, the top tier project in the space during the last cycle. During that time, I was very into infrastructure and also DeFi. And also that's the time that I heard about ZK for the first time and thought that that's a really important technology, that can scale blockchains. There are many use out of the technology. So I was doing some research, and then I came across some articles written by my current co-founder, Simon, because he's like a ZK expert, you know, in the Chinese community. So he would publish a lot of like articles around it. So we had some technical conversations online. And then after, the next few years, I also have several conversations with him because we have some common friends. Yeah, so that's also how I started this project. Because earlier this year, we have we heard about BitVM. It's created by Robin, and then that's the time that I realized that, oh, you really have to apply ZK in Bitcoin to scale it or to make it interoperable in the most trustless way to other ecosystem. And this technology would be groundbreaking. It would really, just completely transform it into like a dynamic asset. And as we all know that Bitcoin is so currently it's still like the biggest crypto assets and also the most accepted crypto asset. So you just cannot imagine, how much potential that you could unlock if we just build out the infrastructure. That's the missing piece in the whole thing. So that's why our project will really focus on building the core foundational infrastructure. So we are laser focused into doing so, into this. So currently we have two products. The first is the Fiamma bridge, which is a BitVM trust minimized Bitcoin bridge, and the other is a settlement layer on Bitcoin that also implement BitVM. So these two technologies are what we think they're crucial in unlocking Bitcoin's potential. And then a lot of people would mistaken us as like Bitcoin layer 2 sometimes, because when people think about, scalability and also ecosystems around Bitcoin, they would think about layer 2. But actually, we're totally different in terms of the positioning and the product and also like the focus. Yeah.
No, that's a really interesting overview and background. It's interesting how you went full circle from Bitcoin being a scam when you're 6 or 7 years old to now here working on some major infrastructure in the Bitcoin ecosystem.
Yeah, and actually 1 year ago, I also when my tech co-founder and other people talk about, oh, we're doing something verification on Bitcoin, the first thing I came out of my mouth was like, isn't it a scam? Yeah, that's the first reaction. So yeah, so a lot of time you would be skeptical at first, but when you study it, you understand that, oh, actually it's the game-changing thing. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting that that philosophy is in your background. So I understand, like that was when I was just doing some research on you and Jordan too. Like that's the first thing that leapt out at me was the philosophy background. So I guess it makes perfect sense that you would inherently be skeptical of most things, right? Being a philosopher deep down. But ZK, what's really interesting is that normally when we talk about zero technology or zero knowledge proofs, a lot of times it's in the Ethereum domain, right? We know that a lot of these things can be done off chain to just verify transactions because you don't need the whole proof. You just need one part of it to verify that these things are happening. So I think that's what's really unique about Fiamma is that you're now using this ZK technology for this bridge. And as you pointed out, it's not a layer 2. It's actually enabling and a facilitator, because this bridge is there to connect ecosystems like Bob, for instance. We've had Alexi on our podcast earlier in the season. So maybe let's unpack that a little bit and talk about ZK, because even just like hearing you speak on a space, one of the things that's really quite impressive to me about what Fiamma has already been able to do is just how small. Like, one of the big problems with Bitcoin, of course, is that the blocks are really tiny. It can only hold so much data. But you've been able to, because normally when we think about ZK, it's very computationally heavy. It's a lot of data. But how is Fiamma able to sort of shrink that? Like, that's one of the unique things about Fiamma, is turning these ZK proofs into these really manageable, digestible, bite-sized pieces for this to work on the chain. So maybe let's start unpacking the technology a little bit.
Yes, yeah, definitely. So I will discuss this like in two parts. The first part is that it's general understanding about ZK. So actually, you can separate ZK, into two parts. The first is the proof generation, and the second is the proof verification. So the generation definitely would take like more computational resources most of the time, but for verification, it's meant to be more efficient. Yeah, but the thing is with Bitcoin is that even if it's meant to be efficient, it's different from Ethereum, right? It has smart contract that can have verifier deploy on Ethereum to verify the ZK proofs. So it's like quite natural. But for Bitcoin, it has very limited programmability, and then it has very limited block space. So when you try to write ZK verifiers in Bitcoin script, you will get massive script size, and that's, I think, our team also came up with the first version of the ZK verifier in Gross 16 in Bitcoin script. So that's over 7 gigabytes. Yeah, so so that's the first version. I think it's back in May or June last year. And then and then we definitely did a lot of optimization. So now the Gross 16 is slightly over 1 gigabytes, and then for the Flonk it's around 0.8 gigabytes, and then we would further optimize it in the future. And also the second step, definitely, it's also called fragmentation, because you cannot put, even if it's 0.8 gigabytes, it's still much larger than the 4 megabyte block limit of Bitcoin. So that's why we need to fragment it into like small pieces. So for instance, if we fragment it into 1,000 pieces, then it would be around, let's say, how much is it? 800 kilobytes? It will be 800 kilobytes. So it's like smaller. It's actually smaller than the 4 megabytes block limit. So theoretically speaking, this will work. But actually there are also issues, right? So because these are still larger than the typical transaction that Bitcoin accept. The typical transactions that the Bitcoin accept is around 400 kilobytes. That's the maximum. So if you want to get through those larger chunks, like 800 kilobytes, you need miners to cooperate with you. So I think that this will introduce centralization risk to this whole quiet trustless setup or trust minimized setup. So that's why we are also thinking about ways to, first, we will further reduce the size. The second, we will have like other ways to go around this problem. Yeah, so actually in terms of engineering, there are a lot of issues to be solved. But as we can see that we've already tested that we have, like, because we manually fragment the verifiers, there are some that are smaller that actually can go through, naturally. It just, there are some chunks are bigger that need to be further fragment. So that's basically how we handle it at the moment. And and in terms of like the script size, like, we know that there are some other teams that are also trying to optimize and fragment it, but as we know that it actually took other teams a longer time, And so I do appreciate the GK development background that our team bring to the table. They've been developing GK VM and relevant technology for 3 to 4 years at least. And then so that's why when they, fragment the script and optimize it, it just become very handy. So to be honest, to fragment the gross-16 verifier, it only took us 2 weeks. But for other teams, I think that it took them several months, and I'm not sure if it's done yet. So I do notice that there are some strengths in my team that's like genius. And before I joined the team, I actually didn't know that.
So
I just
no, I was just gonna ask, like, in terms of the fragmentation, because right now the Fiamma testnet bridge is running. Is one of the goals to get it down to 400, kilobytes before launching mainnet? Is that why you're currently, continuing to work through the test bridge right now, and then to further optimize? Is like, will you launch the mainnet once you guys have gotten the fragmentation down to 400 kilobytes or less?
Yeah, I think like there are like different ways. There are different trade-off. Like for instance, from my understanding, how other teams they're doing is that they would just go with a larger chunk, and then they will collaborate with the miners, so that the transaction will go through. So there's one way you can go through this route, but I think that it's very likely that we will not go through that route because we want higher level of decentralization. So what we are doing is that we might introduce like a Bitcoin secure DA specifically just for the bridge, and then that couldn't be a normal DA because you need to force the bridge operator to post data on the DA, because if we use a regular DA, you cannot force operator to do that, right? So that's why that's something that we are designing and also working on at the moment. With this DA, we can further fragment it. For instance, now we can only fragment it up to 1,000 chunks. So this means that there's like a limit in terms of like how small each chunk could be. But if we use the DA, we can fragment it to more chunks, like maybe 2,000 chunks and more, so that each chunk will be much smaller, so that the whole thing will run super smoothly, like entirely on Bitcoin, and you just don't really need to like cooperate with the miner to introduce some unknown centralization risk.
Very interesting. I'm actually kind of curious more on like the social aspect. I feel like at times cryptocurrency, and I'm sure we can all agree, is like a religion to a lot of people. And there's a bunch of different denominations that are constantly fighting for which one's better. So I'm curious, in the current state of the crypto ecosystem, where everybody's fighting for the next hot layer 2 or focusing on why Solana, the layer 1's better. And then you go over here in the corner and there's often Bitcoin maxis that say, leave our blocks alone, let them be the way they originally intended to be. Why is it that you guys specifically chose, I'm going to go play over here with Bitcoin only and not any of these other ones? And then how do you feel that building on Bitcoin and utilizing this new technology of BitVM is working within the ecosystem? Like, obviously it's exciting and you guys are doing it, but do you feel like Bitcoin maxis at times are throwing tantrums that people are building on Bitcoin, or is that even a problem anymore?
Yeah, and I think that I feel like definitely I don't think Bitcoin maxi would be against like what we're building, because we're bringing more utility to Bitcoin, right? So for miners, they can actually get more fees because there are more usage on the network. And then I think for our application, so we're doing like a bridge or settlement layer infrastructure. So the whole thing is actually optimistic. So most of the computation would, like when there's challenge happen, there would be a lot of usage of the block space, definitely. But most of the time there won't be a challenge. So I don't think that will bother the Bitcoin maxi. And on the other hand, during we can bring more utility to Bitcoin. You can now trust, like in a nearly trustless manner, you can turn Bitcoin into collateral, to borrow like stable coins and to provide liquidity to pools. You can earn many sustainable DeFi use, and then you can also use it fairly easily in the real world situations. So in this case, you can really have a future where you hold Bitcoin, and then you also can spend out of it and earn, on the same time. And I think that Bitcoin actually would love it, right? Because they can just, they can have like 99% of their assets in Bitcoin. And then whenever they want to use some money to, pay for rent or like pay for anything, they can just, in a trustless and secure manner, borrow stablecoin out of it, and also engage some DeFi activity to earn use. The use can offset some, like a big portion of their daily expenses. So I think that should be a good thing for them.
No, I completely agree with you. And projects like what you guys are building are highly needed as most of the world starts to adopt Bitcoin and use it as a reserve currency. To your point, you have these people that are holding an asset that they're too afraid to spend or use because it's just appreciating. They're like, well, what else can I do with it? So projects like yours give them reasons to do other things. And then side caveat before Ryan asks this question is, I love your background because I have yet to meet somebody who doesn't have the same generic, boring answer of I was exposed to cryptocurrency because of 2017 and ICOs. I was exposed. It's always the ICO talk. And out of nowhere, you coming from left field with my mom played video games and was buying stuff with Bitcoin is such a cool background story. Like, I love it.
Yeah. I was very like, I was, I don't know, like when I think about it, I wish that I could do more research.
You're only 6. That's hilarious. That's awesome.
Yeah, and my mom shouldn't listen to me. Like she should do her own research.
Well, no, this is really interesting, and kind of what you were just touching on with the BTC Maxi. Kind of that's our stance. Like my wife and I, we do hold Bitcoin, most of which we keep in cold storage, right? But to your point, Yovela, like we like to kind of dabble in DeFi and do these things. So like getting to do the one-click staking, for instance, on Bob, and just kind of play around in DeFi and use it as collateral. And I think, as Jordan pointed out, and everybody's starting to see, it's moving toward this future now. We already have some loan companies, for instance, that are accepting Bitcoin as collateral so that you can get a mortgage for a house. So I think this is only going to continue to perpetuate, right? But thinking about the future, like what's next for Fiamma? What is happening? Obviously people can engage in the testnet bridge now and earn some fluff energy, which again, I love all the cuteness about like Fiamma. But like what's coming for the future? What's on the road ahead in the coming months for Fiamma?
That's a really cool, interesting question for us. So for us, that for the BitVM bridge itself, it's not like any other bridge. Like it's different from, a cross-chain bridge between some programmable blockchains. It's very complicated. As you can see, I actually posted like a roadmap and component for, different phases for BitVM bridge. So definitely, I think the core focus would be we need to build out a very secure and resilient strong bridge that can actually support, the massive ecosystem, like on top of it. There are like many ecosystems like Babylon, Bob, Solana, and more. So that would be like a really big thing for us to do. And the second thing is that we also have like a settlement layer that's powered by BitVM. And then we think that you can actually build very innovative use cases directly on Bitcoin on our settlement layer. Because for now, most Bitcoin L2s, they're actually having issues settle directly on Bitcoin, right? And I think that when we have, when the bridge is more mature, people are putting more focus on more use cases in Bitcoin. They will also focus on how to leverage the network security aspect of it, not just the financial asset feature. So that will be like another infrastructure that's along the way. And the third would be like I'm always looking into some innovative use cases on Bitcoin and always want some mass adoption out of it. So as I mentioned, that it would be super cool if there could be like a very trust minimized application that built out of all of these amazing trust minimized infrastructure that we are building that I could just spend, directly out of my Bitcoin, without even touching it, selling it. So this type of mass adoption use cases or more innovative DeFi use cases on Bitcoin will be something that I'm very interested into researching more about.
Well, Yovela, thank you for your time today. We're excited for the project you're building, excited to get this in front of more eyeballs. Again, the people that watch this show are mostly institutions, family offices, hedge funds, venture capital, what have you, people that have money and they're excited to invest it in different places. So that brings me to closing us out. Where's the best place for people to reach out to you, to connect with you and your team, whether the ones that want to get nitty gritty and start speaking to somebody on the dev team or somebody that really just wants to reach out and speak more on like a person-to-person level?
Yeah, I think that the best place to reach out would be Twitter. I think you can comment, or like DM, whatever. Most of the time I'm active on Twitter. So just feel free to reach out me directly there. And then you can also ask Ryan and Jordan, of course, if you know them. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, always happy to make an intro to Yovela for anybody that's listening. And again, all these links are going to be linked below. So feel free to reach out on Twitter, X, LinkedIn, their website, what have you. But Yovela, again, thank you so much for being on the show today. And for those of you that are listening, we'll catch you on another episode of Decentral Lounge.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.